Hello and welcome back to my channel and welcome to a full list of ranking Skulduggery present. Welcome back to me ranking all but 2 Skulduggery Pleasant books from worst to best. If you have seen any of my lives, you will know that I have been doing a complete Skulduggery read-along where we started at book 1, got all the way to book 15, and there were a couple of little detours on the way. Now, I just want to say that I didn't just say full ranking because there are 2 books that I cannot rank because I haven't read them. The first is this one, which is the original arc for Skulduggery Pleasant, and the other one is the collection of short stories Armageddon Out of Here. But everything else I have ranked the entire time we have been reading. I have done a complete Coil score for them, which I will put to the side as I explain to you how they are the worst to best, so that I can tell you a bit about this series. Now, if you haven't seen the series, just know this is about a young girl called Valkyrie who meets a skeleton detective called Skulduggery Pleasant. She learns a lot about herself, a lot about the world, and a lot about magic. It's a really good time. Moving forward, it will be very spoiler heavy. So if you haven't read the series yet, oh, you've been warned. That's it. I don't care about spoilers. As of this point, I'm going in. And I have the scoreboard in front of me. So, or I had the scoreboard in front of me. Where's the scoreboard gone? Other than Armageddon Out of Here and the Arc, the lowest ranked book with only 35 points and thus 3 stars for me was Resurrection. This is book 10 of 15. This was the first book in the newer series. Essentially it went from books 1 to 9, 10 to 15 as season 2, although technically it's all part of the same series. Now, the reason this scored so low is because the characters did my fucking head in. Essentially by this point, loads of things has happened to Valkyrie, and Valkyrie has not dealt with it well. She has dealt with it by running away to America, training herself to be a ninja, and not talking to anybody. So when this book starts, she's just kind of like depressed. She's suffering from PTSD and she feels guilty for all of the horrible things that have happened previously. And whilst I believe that is far more authentic than other magical books, it was just so bleak. It was so bleak. I've just realised I've left that there the entire time. It was just so bleak. Like, the whole time I just felt really sorry for Valkyrie. And Valkyrie is meant to be this badass. She's meant to be this person that we kind of like look up to, even though she's a horrible person. And I really struggled to get past that. I guess when you like a character in a particular setting or in a particular way, it becomes very difficult to see them when they are at their worst. And whilst this was probably the most honest of all the Skulduggery books, it was my least favourite. Other than that, like, the plot and the writing style was still great. They still scored pretty well. It's still a great series. This book did not put me off. But if I had come in as like, oh, I'm just going to skip to the new series so that I can read the newest book, I don't know that I'd have committed. This isn't something that I would like happily recommend, unlike the other books where I'm like, there's such a good time. So yes, Resurrection was the worst in getting 3 stars. Next is Kingdom of the Wicked. This scored 43 in total, and okay, I've talked about this on the live show. I don't like time travel. I find time travel in books really convenient. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like time travel and time shunting, as it is in this one, really frustrating, and for that reason that's why it scored so low. Obviously the characters are kind of more chill because it's in the first season still, but just in general, I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about this really biblical message that was kind of coming through, that we can all get on, and we can all be lovey, and like, also humans are experiencing magic in ways they should not be experiencing it. That was kind of interesting, but the fact that they get shunted to the past and to the future and to different realms, I just didn't care. And I thought it was interesting kind of looking at what could have happened if the good guys hadn't won in the past, but it wasn't my favourite. But it did still get 4 stars. All of the books moving forwards, unless otherwise stated, got 4 stars. So it was just a disappointment at that point, especially because we were 7 books in. Next was Grimwa. It was difficult to core this one anyway, because this is essentially just a recap of all the books and the series up to book 14 anyway. What I did like, however, is that it sets up some stuff for the next series and for the final book with this whole Gog Magog thing. I liked that it was kind of sinister. I did this one as an audiobook because I didn't want to upset my very pretty, pristine copy, and I really enjoyed this little letter that you get at the start that kind of hints that there might be a secret code in this, but never actually states if there is, because at the end of the day, it's Derek Landy and he's probably just fucking with us. Do you know what I mean? He does that. Derek Landy will just fuck with us for absolutely no reason. I literally just said I wanted to keep this pristine. There is something sticky on my copy, and now that's made me really sad. Are there sticky things on my other copies? What was the sticky thing from? Why is it sticky? That one's called 44. I still enjoyed it. It got 4 stars. Next is Seasons of War. This is another one where they got sent to an alternate dimension, or back in time, or something to that effect. And again, whilst the writing of this one was slightly more interesting, there were characters in this that I had a really good time with. We meet Malice for the first time. Now, Valkyrie gets a younger sister towards the end of the first season, and in the second season, a lot of it becomes about how she feels about her sister because she kills her. So, like I said, spoilers, right? Now, she does bring her back again, that's all good, but Malice is the character that is like the evil version of her sister, that shows that her sister has the capacity for evil in on herself. And this character is Serpine. He's just sarcastic the entire time, and it's a lot of fun. So I did enjoy this one. Of all the ones that kind of shunt to and fro and go back to alternate realities or jump back and forwards in time, this one was probably the one that did it the best. Next is The Last Stand of Dead Men. This is when they are fully in the war of the last season. It is the second to last book. It was super dramatic, and unfortunately the evil guys win at the end of this, which is never a good time. But this one kind of lost it around atmosphere, considering they were at war. I thought the writing and the characters were still wonderful, and there was still a lot of stuff going on, but the actual atmosphere of it felt very, like, fine. Like, I just didn't feel as tense reading this one as I have done when there have been lower stakes, which didn't really make any sense to me. I still did really enjoy it. It was a really good time, but Ghastly dies. Immediately not going to be my favourite. How dare you? How dare you? Next, with 50 out of 70 for Coil Pile, is Bedlam. Now, I did really enjoy this one. This one very much looked at Valkyrie dealing with her mental health, and she goes through what is essentially a asylum type thing, which is where it gets Bedlam from. This is the book where Owen Darkly stops being annoying. Now, Owen Darkly is this character who kind of becomes like a young Valkyrie in the second season, and he is very much the voice of reason, but is also very, very stupid amongst his peers at school. And this is the one where he finally has to step up to be a hero because his family are not going to save him and his friends are not going to save him. And I really, really like that. By this point, he's done a couple of adventures and he's had a real shit time. Every character has a shit time. I don't know what it is. Derek Landy has a real thing where he has to punish his characters. That's fine, I'm with that, but like, Owen Darkly is a treasure, and stop being mean to him. I was glad to see that like actually he came into his own. So this one was probably why it scored higher than others. I did really enjoy this one, and yeah, like I said, it got 50 and 4 stars. Then we have Dead or Alive. This is the penultimate one, and again, scored really high. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I just want to give a shout out to Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin, who gifted me the signed special Waterstones edition of Dead or Alive. It is so, so pretty, and I really, like, I have the print that comes with it hanging up on my wall already. That's the signature there, limited edition. It's so swanky, but this is the copy that I read for the read-along because I didn't want to muss this one up, and this one isn't sticky, so what a relief. This one was super dramatic because we see the faceless ones returning. We see that Valkyrie is really struggling to like maintain power against them, and she has to do everything she can to save her sister, who at this point Malice is just straight up not a good person in that realm. But we also meet Cadaverous Cain, who is the version of Skulduggery Pleasant without Valkyrie, and he is just, okay, Skulduggery Pleasant is not a good person. He is a very morally grey character anyway, but in this one we see Cadaverous Cain, who is even more morally grey and very much trying to manipulate Valkyrie all the time. What I did fucking love about this though is seeing how Skulduggery recognises Valkyrie's behaviour in Valkyrie, and everything they try and do to kind of save Valkyrie's sister from going through this like really horrible thing. Doesn't end well though. This one, another one, ends super dramatically and not happy, but weirdly this one didn't mind it so much. It was a good time. Like I said, 4 stars, great work. Okay, the next one is one of these spin-off books. This is Maleficent 7. This one scored 52 out of 70 and got 4 stars. Now, at one point in the first season, Tanith Lowe gets taken over by a revenant. Now, revenants are essentially ghostly spirits that take over your body. They make you stronger, they make your power more stronger. but you have no personality left. They basically, it's kind of like if you've seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you become a vampire, you have all the personality traits of the person that was taken over, but the vampire is considerably more aggressive and evil. And essentially Tanithlo is a ninja. She is one of the most incredible killers of this world, and suddenly she has this horrible thing inside her, and she decides that she wants to help Darkess, who is the evil alter ego of Valkyrie, and to do that she has to destroy all of the weapons that could kill Darkess. Now we also see her relationship with Sanguine, who is just in love with her. He's a bad guy. He's a very, very bad guy, but he is in love with Tanithlo, and you kind of see him like plotting against her, which I really appreciated. The other thing I appreciated is we get more of her backstory. She's one of the few characters that actually get full explained backstory to how they got their powers, where they come from, what their story is, and I really liked it. And if you like the Arya story from Game of Thrones where she learns to be an assassin, that is this, but for YA, and it's just a good time. It's just such a good time, and I really, really like this. And I can see how this book then inspired later books, because Valkyrie goes through a very similar transformation when she's in America. But I loved this, I thought it was great. And whilst I don't appreciate Tanithlo being evil, I prefer Tanithlo to be not evil, I really enjoyed her story as an evil character. I guess it's when you see the juxtaposition between a character you love being evil versus a character you love being sad. Like, there's very different vibes. Next is Midnight. Midnight was a really interesting one. Again, it's in the newer season, it's book 11, and this one scored 52 out of 70. And what I liked about this one is this very much felt like the original series, in that Valkyrie has to go through a whole bunch of tasks and a whole bunch of adventure to find her sister who has been kidnapped. This, I felt really sorry for Omen Darkly in this one. Omen Darkly is a struggler in this one, and there is a scene where he basically gets bullied into letting him, like, this old man like rocks up. He's already more powerful than Omen anyway, but he basically just belittles Omen into Omen giving up the child that he's babysitting, and it's really sad, and Omen is still just sat on the sofa when Valkyrie comes home, and that nearly broke my heart. So immediately, excellent points. If you can make me feel things, good work. So this one I definitely scored higher on like the writing and the logic of it. All of it was great, and it was sad, but in like a better way. So yeah, Valkyrie has to kind of work out how she's going to get around all these new rules that she has been given with regards to the kidnapping of her sister. And it was very tense, and I loved it. Next is the OG Skulduggery Pleasant. Now, to be fair, this got 4 stars, it scored 53, which I think is probably average. It's definitely slap bang in the middle of the 4 stars scoring that you could get, so it was obviously a great first impression. This one was a reread for me. It was the only book of the series that I had read before, but I barely remembered any of it, and I had such a good time. Like I said, it's the original one. You find out how Skulduggery and Valkyrie meet. You meet China Sorrows, who is a lot more evil in this version than she is in later versions. She definitely still has that like evilness about her, but like this is when she's basically at her most manipulative, and I kind of love that. We meet Ghastly for the first time, who's amazing, and it just perfectly establishes all the different characters. It's just a good time. It's a good time, and I know I'm going to keep saying that phrase because it just generally, the series is a good time, and if you haven't read it yet, like, what are you doing? Next is Playing with Fire, which is the second one. I guess because this one has a lot more action in it, the characters, I will say this for this one, right, in comparison to this one, the villain actually felt villainous, whereas this one, it felt like more like a tense villain. Like, Serpine obviously comes back later on and shows that he has villainous tendencies, like he is not a good person, but with this one, I can't remember what his name was, Vengeance Dusk, Vengeance was a lot more aggressive. Like, just as an antagonist, he was a true antagonist, and everything he did was to spite everyone else and to gain more power, and I really liked that. So this one kind of felt like a warm-up to this, which is why it surprised me when Sanguine came back, because there are a lot more antagonists later on who I don't think actually meet what Vengeance did as an antagonist. Just the way he kind of manipulates other characters and moves around in the society, the power that he has, physical strength and mental strength. I think when you make a strong antagonist like this so early on in your series, you are setting yourself up for a difficult battle. I do think Derek Landy did it, but I think he set himself a really high bar with this book, and that I need to remember when I write my books is to not write an antagonist this good too early. Next, with a score of 56, is Dark Days. Now, at this point, Skulduggery Pleasant has left the building, left the planet. He's in an alternate universe because they have sent the faceless ones back. And Valkyrie is doing her best to kind of find his skull so that she can bring him back. And the large majority of the book is that, versus them fighting Sanguine for the first time. It is also at this point that Valkyrie has started cheating on her boyfriend, which is not ideal, but an interesting story, and I obviously rated it quite high. This is Spring-Heeled Jack, and he is a trip. He's a trip. As an antagonist, he's just a bit bizarre, but he's a good time. Okay, drinking game. Drink every time Hannah says a good time, and you'll be hydrated forever, so long as you're drinking water and not something else. Next, scoring a 56 and thus 4 stars, is the Faceless ones. This one is obviously the final in the original trilogy. The trilogy as it was super dramatic, and I really liked it. I liked the battle scene, I liked the whole switch around of things. Basically, there is a character in this that you think you can trust, and then it turns out you can't. So Fletcher Wren and Valkyrie are very much like an item at this point. And my favourite thing was like the Lake Witch hag person, who was just this like really grotty monster who comes out of fucking nowhere like towards the end for no reason. Like, why is she here? But I don't know, but like it was a good time. I enjoyed that. Finally, in the 5 stars, we have, with 57 points out of 70, The Dying of the Light. This was the grand finale, and I cried. I'll admit it, I cried. There is a scene where someone's soul has to be used to close this portal to control magic, right? Because this thing has been brewing for a really long time. It has been sharing magic with people who shouldn't have magic, and it has been opening up portals and all these other kinds of like horrible things. And someone's soul has to be thrown into it, right? And there is this like really beautiful moment where we think it's going to be Skulduggery that does it, and he puts his hat on Valkyrie's head. And I cried because I thought he's going to sacrifice himself. That would be such a Skulduggery thing to do. And then he doesn't. He throws someone else in because he's a dickhead. And I felt really silly for crying. But I'm not gonna lie. There's a bit in Dead or Alive where, again, I thought someone was going to die, and then Derek Landy did an old switcheroo and they didn't die, and I didn't fall for it that time. Landy, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice and I'm a fucking idiot. So it was great. It was clever. It was emotional. Okay, 3rd highest with 57, which is actually on par with this, I don't know why I said it like that, was Mortal Coil. At this point in the novel, Valkyrie has not admitted to anyone that she has Darkess within her, or that is even a possibility, and there are people coming out to kill her, and the only thing she can think to do to kind of protect herself from letting Darkess out is to have her soul kind of sewn up, and she goes to this like really horrible creature who does it for her and nearly dies, and it's a really tense book. In the meantime, we also have this guy here who is a zombie and a fucking idiot, and I just... Scapegrace and Thrasher are wonderful characters. Derek Landy shits on them from a great height on a regular basis, but they're just funny. Like, they're just really comedic characters. And it isn't in this book, it is much, much later, but they get the most adorable little arc throughout the entire series, and they are those moments of levity in every book. When their chapters rock up and you see it from their perspective, it's just such a good time. It's such a good time, and just they're really funny. Like, it's just so beautifully crafted. And Lizzie, my flatmate, asked Derek Landy when we met him why he didn't bring them back for later books, and he said it's because whenever he brings them back, he shits on them from a great height. And those aren't the words he used, but that is basically what he said. And I don't mind. I don't mind watching these characters be tortured because they take it in their stride, and it's very, very funny. So my second highest ranked book was Deathbringer with 58 out of 70. And this one, again, it's 8s and 9s across the board. This one was really, really tense. Now, the Deathbringer is essentially a character that is going to kill off lots of people, bring their souls into this like necromancy cult type thing, and the whole time people think it's going to be Valkyrie. And then you find out, plot twist, that for a long time people thought it was going to be Skulduggery, especially in his Lord Vile form. And this one I just thought was really, really clever because it was, again, at the end of a trilogy, but at the beginning of in the middle of the series, really tense, really well crafted, and we're still learning about characters. And I think sometimes like writers can very much rely on what it is you think you know about characters, but not actually know how to turn that into a decent plot twist. But Derek Landy, as always, is a master, and I just thought this was so cleverly done. There were things that I was learning about characters that I was like, of course, but also had no idea. So it was just a good time. It was a good time. But weirdly, for enjoyment it scored 10, for logic it scored 7, intrigue 9, plot 8, writing 9, atmosphere 8, and characters 8, although it probably deserved higher. We have with the highest ranking Until the End. This was so dramatic. It starts so bleak and it just gets worse, but it's tense and it's atmospheric, and the whole time you have no idea who is going to win. You've got Valkyries on the side of the bad guys. There were plot twists left, right and centre. We learned more about Skulduggery's family, which we hadn't learnt about before. You have a whole plot twist that has been brewing for like 6 books by this point, because you have Crepuscular Vise, who seems like a bad guy, but you don't know what his plan is the entire time, and then that is all revealed. All of that. It was just... When you have a really long series, and you've crafted a whole bunch of different plot lines, and then you kind of somehow manage to organise this myriad of strings into a beautiful plait, a perfect ending, and then you tell me there might be more books in the series to come, 5 stars. 5 stars. I did cry at this point as well, but I cannot remember at what point I cried. There was something that was just, it got me at one point. Characters were dying left, right and centre. Omen was an absolute trooper, and I fucking called it about Sebastian Tau. Now, earlier on, basically book 10, we meet this character, Sebastian Tau, who has come back from the future. And I was kind of like, well, he has to be one of the main characters, but who could it be? Like, which, like, B-list character could it be? And I was like, I'm convinced it's Omen Darkly, right? Because the way he is reacted to is basically the way that Omen Darkly is reacted to by everyone as well. And I just thought there is something about this character that seems very familiar. And I started to notice that Omen Darkly and Sebastian Tau's chapters were always next to each other. It was always one and the other. And the way that Darkess reacts to him is very similar to the way Valkyrie reacts to Omen. And there were things adding up. So when we found out at the end of this that it was Omen Darkly and he was able to complete his mission and he did save the world... Omen Darkly, you're my hero. So there we go. There are 17 books ranked from worst to best, and an absolute carnage of an explanation as to why they got those scores. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you pick up this series, and other than that, I hope you have a nice day.